So the last game from tonight's action have just finished, and we are getting to the point of the season where for all these teams that is on the bubble of whether or not if they make the playoffs or not, it's really crunch time for them. And that I think after what we saw from these first 6 games, not only the fact that it is the case that it's crunch time for them, but also those late goals that these team that is in the bubble either score or concede could really change the picture of how the playoffs would look. And indeed, after what we saw here in these first 6 games and all these games that have a lot of implication in terms of playoffs, we saw late goals and it has completely flipped the script in terms of how the Eastern Conference looked in terms of the playoff race. But the first game I'm going to talk about is yesterday's game between New England versus Nashville, and we're just going to skip to the second half because in the first half, besides the only notable thing to talk about where the fact that this game was delayed for 83 minutes because of lightning and that this game didn't start until around 9 o'clock local time. Yeah, that was probably one of the most boring soccer first half I've ever seen in MLS, and that I'm just going to go straight into the second half because there was more action happen in the second half. And in the 49th minute, Turner was able to deny Rios in the near post, and I thought that was probably the best chance up until that moment. But then New England started to kind of get some pressure on Nashville, and that I feel like Bruce Arena saw that since his team was on the front foot, he decided to summon Carlos Hill, who, there was definitely a lot of question of whether or not if he's going to be played in this game. I mean, he did get back to training with the team, but there was definitely question of whether or not if he's going to be match fitness enough to even make an appearance in this game. Well, it turns out looks like he was match fitness enough to trying to make an appearance and trying to hope that since New England was kind of on top at that moment, bring Carlos Hill can really change the game for them. And although there were times that he did create some good moments for New England, I thought there was also times where you can clearly see that he's not 100% match fitness, and that this is kind of what happened when you haven't played in 3 months, and especially suffering an injury where it's kind of miraculous the fact that he is able to back with this team after it looked like from when he suffered that injury back in July that it was a season-ending injury and that there was just no way in the world he is going to be coming back for New England. Now, that being said, Nashville did start to get some good chances despite the fact that they had to soak up a lot of pressure. One of them was in the 71st minute when Turner was able to deny Anababa from the far post. And what a story would that be if Anababa was able to score against his former team to get the leading goal. And then up until that point, it was just getting to a point where I feel like whoever scored first is going to win this game. And it turns out Nashville was the one that would score the first goal, and it would be Walker Zimmerman who was able to score a header and a beautiful delivery from Randall Leal, and pretty much a bread butter play for Nashville as they have just looked so dangerous in terms of set pieces, and that Walker Zimmerman has just been unbelievable in terms of carrying this team on his back, not only on the defensive side, but also in terms of the attacking side, where he is just always a threat whenever the ball is whipped into the box. But yeah, Nashville were up 1-0 at that point, and I thought it was game over for New England, and that there was no way the Revs are going to come back from this, because Nashville is a team that don't let leads slip very often from this season. But that was actually something that didn't happen this time, because this time New England was able to respond, and they were able to respond very quickly. Just 4 minutes after Nashville took the lead, Adam Buxaw was able to score from Kekuta Mane to tie the game up at 1 apiece, and that has to feel good for Buxaw, knowing how much he has been struggling this season. And immediately when he scored that goal, you can definitely see he was definitely working much harder and looked like a guy that was looking to try to score a second goal. And just he looked so much more confident, the fact that he was able to get a goal, which has just not been the case for him this season, and not the way that New England was hoping, the fact that he always will go through this drought. goal scoring drought period. But for the last 13 minutes of the game, I thought both teams looked relatively even and they were looking for a winner. But ultimately, it ended in a 1-1 draw. And in terms of shots in this game, 10 shots compared to 9 that New England has. 4 shots on goal compared to 2 that New England has. 3 shots off target compared to 4 that New England has. Both teams had 3 shots that was blocked, and possession-wise, 63% possession compared to 37% possession. And overall, I think it's a fair result for both of these teams because neither of these teams relatively look very well in this game. Although, if you're Nashville, you're going to be frustrated the fact that you had a chance to get another big win, which would have been 3 wins in a row, and really pretty much getting even closer in terms of sealing their spot in terms of making the playoffs. But they're going to hope to look to bounce back in the upcoming weeks, and at least they didn't drop all 3 points in this game against a New England side that has been very dangerous whenever they are on the road. But moving on, in terms of the next match, is Miami. So they got a 2-1 win against Orlando City, which, I said before, for Miami, this is the third opportunity that they get a chance to get themselves above the red line. And after wasting those previous 2 opportunities to potentially go above the red line for the very first time, they took their third opportunity. And it seemed like third time was the charm for Inter Miami, because with this win, they are actually now above the red line for the first time this season. But in terms of this game, this could have really gone either way in terms of something that happened in the last 2 minutes of this game. Now, in the first half, Orlando got the opening goal in the 11th minute when DK was able to score from Antonio Carlos to give Orlando a 1-0 lead. And I thought Orlando were by far the better team in the first 30 minutes, and Miami was really struggling in terms of getting anything going on the attack. Now, as the game went on, Miami started to wake up a little bit and started to kind of try to attack and look for the equalizer. And I also noticed Orlando was really struggling in terms of clearing their lines. Like, there was times when the ball comes into the box, they struggle in terms of clearing their lines and trying to get the ball out. And that would come back to haunt them later in this game. But first, in the 38th minute, Gillespie was able to deny Ben Sweat, who, for whatever reason, was left alone wide open in the box, and that Orlando really got away with that one. Before Mueller was able to clear a Miami header off the line, and that Gillespie then had to tip Morgan's shot over in the 43rd minute, and the pressure were definitely on Orlando, and that you can definitely sense that Miami was probably going to get the equalizer. Though I was also thinking, since we only have 2 minutes left in the first half, can Orlando City able to ride this out? And is it a little bit too late, the fact that Miami is going to run out of time before we head to the second half to make that pressure paid off? Well, the answer to that is no, because they would get the equalizer in the 45th minute. And this was actually an own goal by Janssen after Matuidi. Looked like that shot was clearly going to go wide, and as Janssen was trying to block that shot, unfortunately that ricocheted right back into the back of the net. So it was kind of an unfortunate play for Janssen, and it was kind of a lucky goal for Miami. But that being said, during that play and before that goal actually went into the back of the net, Orlando did not do a good job whatsoever in terms of clearing their lines. That, like, they were giving second, third, and fourth opportunity for Miami to basically score. And when you give up that many opportunity and create that much chaos in the box, most of the time those ones are usually going to go into the back of the net, and that of course is the case in this instant. Now in the second half, Miami definitely looked like they were in control of the game, and that Carranza almost gave Miami the lead, but unfortunately he hit a header off the post, and that Orlando would definitely looked like they were on the ropes, and it was kind of also a matter of time before Miami was going to get that second goal. But this time, Orlando did do a good job in terms of riding out the storm, and that it kind of became a little bit even in the last 15 minutes, and it was really kind of up for grabs of who can score that crucial goal to basically win the game. Well, in the 87th minute, McCarthy was able to make a spectacular save, and probably in contention for save of the week, with the way that Urso basically had an empty net to shoot, and the fact that he looked like he was able to just easily slot it home into the empty net, but instead somehow in some way where McCarthy was already committed in the beginning, he get himself right back onto his feet and somehow in some way able to dive to save that one away. And only the fact that that was a huge golden opportunity squandered by Orlando City, and that Urso clearly should have put that one into the back of the net, that would come back to haunt Orlando City and ultimately would cost them all 3 points, because just 2 minutes later, LGP would score from Lewis Morgan from the header to give Miami the lead and ultimately the crucial 3 points in this game. And the shots in this one, 20 shots compared to 9 that Orlando City has, 4 shots on goal compared to 2 that Orlando City has, 7 shots off target compared to 3 that Orlando City has, 9 shots that was blocked compared to 4 that Orlando City has, and the possession-wise, 49% possession compared to 51% possession in this game, as Miami, for the second time this season, able to beat their in-state rival Orlando City, and they also have ended Orlando City 13-game unbeaten run that actually go all the way back to when they actually first lost to Inter Miami and give them their first ever win in their club history. But yeah, this was a game that, for Miami, not only they'll be very happy with this game, but they are also going to be really thanking their goalkeeper after this game, because this would have gone either way, in that if Urso did put away that one into the back of the net, there's no doubt that Orlando would have got all 3 points in this game, and that if Miami does make the playoffs, this could be the game that they're going to look back as the one, and maybe the moment when McCarthy make that incredible save might be the difference in terms of them actually making the playoffs and not making the playoffs in their first ever season. And as for Orlando, yeah, this is definitely concerning with the way that, it's not just the fact that the 13-game unbeaten run is over, but this is now 4 games without a win. And the last thing you want to do if you're Orlando is to go cold heading into the playoffs, and it seemed like that attack, which has really struggled in the past couple of games and have really kind of looked stale, is continue to struggle in these games. And again, you go into the playoffs, and even if they do of course get to play in the playoffs for their first time in franchise history, if you aren't going to the playoffs like the form that Orlando City is in, you're not going to get very far in terms of that, and you're going to unfortunately catch a team that might be in a much hotter form, and that they could potentially get knocked out in the first round because of how cold that their streak has been in the last couple of games. But moving on, in terms of the next match, is Atlanta versus DC. And boy, oh boy, you talk about a game that also had some crazy thing happening in the last 15 minutes of the game. If you're a DC fan, that last 15 minutes must be a roller coaster ride of emotion for you, because they basically went from having hope, the fact that they get all 3 points against Atlanta and that they're still in contention for the playoffs, to pretty much gave up a late goal to look like drop 2 crucial points that looked like their playoff hope was dead and buried, and then they score a winning goal in the very last minute to once again get their hopes in terms of making the playoffs back alive again. But in the first half, 9 minutes in, they almost had a chance to get the opening goal when Guzan was able to rob Sogar early, before Moreno did have a 30-yard free kick shot that was easily saved by Bill Hamid. But I thought Atlanta would start to put pressure on DC, although the biggest issue for Atlanta, even with the pressure that they put on DC, is that they do not have a final ball, and that's kind of sums up the season for Atlanta, where anytime when they do look threatened on the attack, the only reason why they haven't really threat their opponent and really pressure the opposition goalkeeper is that their final ball is just completely lacking in this team. Now, in the 44th minute, Hamid was once again able to rob Moreno, but this time it was a much harder save as he was able to rob him from long range. But as we head into the second half, I thought it was a very sloppy, disjointed start in the second half by both of these teams. But then we jump into the last 15 minutes, where this is when craziness happened. Russell Canals scored from Gressel to give DC United a 1-0 lead, and this was terrible defending from Atlanta in terms of the set piece, and especially on Miles Robinson's part with the way that he literally let Canals get in front of him. And when you a defender and you let your attacker get in front of you, that is a very bad kind of situation, and you're pretty much in no man's land at that point. But just as DC looked like they were on verge of getting all 3 points and that their season was going to be alive and that their playoff hope was still alive. John Gallagher scores from Brooks Lennon to tie the game up at one apiece, to not only give hope for Atlanta, the fact that they're going to be still in the playoff race, but really put DC hope in terms of making the playoffs to bed. Because if they would have drawn this game, I think they would have been like 5 points behind the red line. And when you have only 3 games left and you need to make up 5 points, that is definitely way too much to ask. And you need a miracle in terms of that to make up for. But just as things were looking dire and that it would look like the season is pretty much done for DC, Rivas would score from Paredes and Mora to give DC United a 2-1 lead. And all of a sudden, DC looked like they were going to be the one that is going to get all 3 points, which in the end they would do that as they got a massive 3 points against Atlanta. And now with this win, they are now just 2 points behind, well, not 2 points, but 3 points behind Miami in terms of the last spot in the playoffs. And although 3 points is still a lot to make up for, especially when you have 3 games left, that is definitely much more manageable, and especially the momentum that DC is having right now. I mean, I've been saying, ever since Ben Olsen is no longer the head coach of this team, this DC team has definitely played much better, and they look like there is a swagger, the fact that they are looking to try to get themselves back into the playoff conversation. And with this win, they're right back into it. Whereas for Atlanta, this cold streak could continue. And, you know, I said this about Houston the other day, where when you want to make the playoffs and you want to make a late playoff push, you cannot go into a cold streak and expect the fact that is basically your effort in terms of making a playoff push. And right now for Atlanta, with the way that they've been in a very cold streak right now, even though they're only 2 points behind Miami for that last spot of the Eastern Conference, they continue to play like that, they most likely is not going to make the playoff this season. And I feel like some Atlanta fans have already accepted the fact that they're not going to make the playoffs this season. Consider this was always going to be a transitional year. But it's also got to be disappointed the fact that they're going to be close and they are not going to make the playoffs just because of the fact that the team is slumping probably at the worst time of the season. Now, in terms of shots in this game, 11 shots compared to the 9 that DC had, 6 shots on goal compared to the 3 that DC had, 1 shots off target compared to the 4 that DC had, 4 shots that was blocked compared to the 2 that DC had, and possession-wise, 55% possession compared to 45% possession that DC had in this game. But moving on, in terms of the next match, is Minnesota. 99% of my thoughts about Minnesota in this game throughout the 90 minutes was that this was going to end 0-0. Like, I just don't see how the Loons were able to get all 3 points, which kind of also sums up the past couple of weeks of how Minnesota has been playing, which has been very uninspiring and doesn't look like a team that is ready to make the playoffs. And although after this performance, they still don't really look like a team that maybe go very far in the playoffs and really give me a lot of confidence that they will do well once they get to the playoffs, at least they did the bare minimum, which is get a massive 3 points against a struggling FC Cincinnati side that might be the first one to potentially out of the playoff contention. But in the first half, FC Cincinnati was all over Minnesota. Like, if you thought that second half against Houston when the Loons was just getting absolutely dominated by the Dynamo, and if you thought that was the worst half for Minnesota this season, yeah, this first half against FC Cincinnati is going to be right up there. I mean, there was just no possession whatsoever that the Loons were trying to get. They were just getting pinned back by FC Cincinnati, and then in some way, we made FC Cincinnati look like a playoff team with the way that we play in the first half. And that they also had a couple of chances, first in the 10-minute when DeYoung should have scored from a free header that he had about 10 yards out, but unfortunately he puts it wide. Then he had another chance in the 30th minute, but unfortunately he puts a shot over the bar after Minnesota got away with a bad giveaway on the defensive end. Now, as we get near halftime whistle, Minnesota did start to try to get some chances of their own, and that Richie actually had to come up with a big save in the 35th minute to Rob Molino, who actually went through on goal. And then if that one went in, that would definitely gone completely against the plays with the way that Cincinnati were by far the better team up until that point. Then DeBossi in the 44th minute had a chance to score his first ever MLS goal when he puts a header that was pretty powerful, but unfortunately it kind of hits the ground, and that you just hope that once it bounced off the ground, it might somehow still creaks it into the back of the net and it doesn't bounce too high enough to go over the bar. Well, unfortunately in this instant, it was the latter, where the ball, when he hit that one onto the ground, it basically just bounced over the bar. And we head to halftime 0-0, which I think even with those missed chances that we had, I'm thankful the fact that we head to halftime 0-0, because Adrian Heath must be giving an earful of this team with the way how bad they play in the first half. And the thing is, it seemed like he definitely did that, because in the second half, the team definitely looked much better and played with so much more energy and just a desire, the fact that they have to win this game no matter what, because they definitely looked like they had more possession, and that there was actually something that I haven't seen Minnesota do very often, which is they actually decided to press Cincinnati. And this is where Cincinnati started to kind of had trouble in terms of the fact that they cannot get out of the Loons press, and that this was also kind of one of the reasons why Minnesota started to have a lot of the possession. But despite the fact that they're getting more possession and having some chances on the attack, the finishing was just not there for the Loons. And it was also not there for FC Cincinnati too, which is why I said there is pretty much 99% chance that this game is going to end 0-0, especially the fact that I feel like I was about to put 0-0 on the board as we head into stoppage time. And then Schoenfeld happened, as he, of course, scores the goal in the 92nd minute to break FC Cincinnati heart to give the Loons a 1-0 lead. And this was definitely an ugly goal, because this was just a scramble in the box, and I know some Cincinnati fans will be frustrated the fact that maybe there should have been a foul in terms of that scramble that happened, but credit to the Loons the fact that on that scramble they never gave up in terms of trying to hit into the back of net, and somehow the ball fall kindly to Schoenfeld, who basically tapped it into the empty net, and the Loons got a 1-0 lead and ultimately got a massive 3 points in this game, as the shots in this one, 18 shots compared to 12 that Cincinnati has, 3 shots on goal compared to 2 that FC Cincinnati has, 10 shots off target compared to 6 that FC Cincinnati has, 5 shots that was blocked compared to 4 that FC Cincinnati has, and possession-wise, 46% possession compared to 54% possession. And, you know, as I said before, no doubt this victory does not give me any hope, the fact that, you know, this kind of give me the fact that this team can still do something when they get into the playoffs, because of how ugly this win was. But I will also say that as we get to this part of the season where you're just desperate in terms of getting 3 points, and especially how the way that Minnesota has been playing the last 4 games, I'll take any 3 points, even as ugly as this is, as we able to grind out a 1-0 win against FC Cincinnati. And that, who knows, maybe this win can also give the team a little bit of confidence, because this team clearly is lacking confidence with the way that they're just drawing way too many games, and also dropping way too many points that they should clearly get in the last couple of games. And yeah, we shall see how this win will potentially give the confidence that this team can have down the stretch. But as for FC Cincinnati, as I said, they might be the first team that looked like is going to be down and out, because with this loss, they're now 5 points behind the red line, and with the way that they only have 3 games left this season, and all of them are going to be on the road, yeah, there's really not a lot of people that is going to be banking on FC Cincinnati making a miraculous run in these last 3 games, especially how much they have been struggling this season, and even struggled to try to get a winning streak going. But moving on, in terms of the next match, it is probably the most surprising result so far from this week. Now, I know coming into this game, TFC were definitely dealing with injury, and it was kind of obvious with the way that Greg Vanney decided to pretty much go with a reserve team against the Union, and the fact that I feel like the Union have a really big opportunity to get 3 points and finally get a win over a Eastern Conference team that is in the top 4. Well, not only the fact that they got a win in this game, but they sent a message to the rest of the league that, you know how you say that we can't beat be a good opponent so far this season, yeah, we basically laid a 5 spot on TFC in this game. Now, in the first half, it was pretty clear that for the first 10 minutes, the Union were all over Toronto, and that would be the story for the entire game of this, as this was probably the most one-sided game that I have ever seen this season. It was just wave after wave after wave attack that TFC had to deal with. And at Westberg, you know, despite the fact that he gave up 5 goals in this game, he was trying his best in terms of trying to keep the ball out of the back. And that I do feel sorry for him, the fact that defense just completely left him exposed and just left him hung out to dry. But he did make a good save off of Bedoya on the header before the inevitable was going to happen, where the Union was going to take the lead, and it will be Sergio Santos who scored from Kai Wagner to give the Union a 1-0 lead. Both of these guys would have career night after this one. But then 3 minutes later, the Union almost made it 2-0, but Westberg was able to rob Jose Martinez, who had a big chance to make it 2-0. Before it was 2-0, when Mark McKenzie, completely left naked in the back post, was able to score from Shibilko and Montero to give the Union a 2-0 lead, before Westberg was back to his robbing duty by robbing Bedoya, and that at that point, that could have been easily 4 or 5-0 in favor of the Union. Like, if Westberg was not in this game, this could have been even more uglier than 5-0. This could have been 6-7 or even 8-0 in favor of the Union. And at halftime, Philly was out shooting TFC 16-1 at that point. 16-1 to a Union side that is not known in terms of a team that usually like to put shooting practice against their opposition. Now, in the second half, you know, despite the fact that TFC were getting dominated, I would expect there should be some pushback, and that this is a team that is at the top of the Eastern Conference and are leading the supporter show. And after what Greg Vanney basically said, that he was upset at the fact that the supporter shield was not awarded, and that just recently, a couple of days ago, they were decided to kind of reverse the decision in some way, kind of because of the criticism that Vanney basically said the supporter shield not awarding. I mean, in some way, it was kind of good karma, the fact that he basically said that he wants the supporter shield to be an award, and the fact that, yeah, you know, if you want the supporter shield to be awarded, wouldn't you want to actually show up in this game against Philly? Because in the second half, it was basically the same thing. The Union was just completely dominating in this game, and they would make it 3-0 in the 55th minute when Montero would score an absolute golazo from Shibilko. Definitely in contention for goal of the week, the way that he struck that one for about 26 yards out. Then Santos probably could have made it 4-0 in the 60th minute when he basically was left wide open from about 5 yards out, but blast that one over it into the Delaware River. But he didn't make amends in the 62nd minute when he would score his second goal from Wagner that would also grab his second assist, before Westbrook once again was able to deny Aronson, and that the Union was just shown no mercy. Like, there's many times when you see a team go up 4 or even 3-0 that they might start to level things out and just kind of settle down a little, but oh no, the Union was showing no mercy. They had a point to prove in this game. And then in the 68th minute, Santos would complete his hat trick from Aronson to make it 5-0 in favor of the Union. And thankfully for TFC, that was the last time they had to pick the ball out of the back of the net, as in the end, Philly absolutely destroyed TFC in this one. And the shots in this game, 27 compared to just 3 that TFC had. 12 shots on goal per the 1 that TFC had. 9 shots off target per the none that TFC had. 6 shots that was blocked per the 2 that TFC had. And possession-wise, 53% possession compared to 47% possession that Toronto had in this game. And there is no doubt that this was just a combination of the Union probably playing the best game that I've ever seen from them this season, and also a combination of TFC playing probably the worst game this season, even though they were playing with a reserve team. Like, I don't think anybody would have saw this one coming, with the way that this was supposed to be the battle between the top 2 best team in the league. And yet, it turns out to be kind of a one-sided affair like that. I mean, yeah, nobody really saw this one coming. And if you're TFC, yes, this is a tough loss for them, but they're gonna have to try to come back for this, because this is gonna really start to test TFC in these next couple of games, where after they suffer such an embarrassing loss like that, can they mentally regroup to try to get themselves back to winning ways? Because if you started to have this 5-0 result that kind of gets into their heads and they started to go on a bad run. Remember how just yesterday we said that TFC was in a good spot and that they looked like a team that coming out of the Eastern Conference and make the MLS Cup? Well, when you have a team that can go into the playoffs in a cold spell, this is why I said that once we get into the playoff time, it is really all about the team that only have the least amount of injury to deal with this season, but also the team that could be the hardest coming into the playoffs, that could actually make a really deep run heading into this season playoffs. But moving on into the final game on this board is none other than Chicago and the Red Bulls. So last week, Chicago was able to get a point after they looked like they were on their way of losing a game at home, and that they were able to get a late goal to draw SKC 2-2 in that game. Well, this week, unfortunately, they did the latter. They basically were on verge of getting all 3 points, and then the Red Bulls basically equalized in that. This is the second week in a row they were able to score a late equalizer in this game. Now, early on, there was really not much chances for either of these teams, and that probably the best moment to talk about in this game is that there was a shout for a handball right at the half-hour mark when Mihailovic's shot looked like it hit Denhan, and that, I saw the replay a couple of times, and it was really hard to tell whether or not if that actually hit Denhan or not. But either way, it remained 0-0 up until that point, and it looked like this was going to head to halftime 0-0 until Kyle Duncan scored a very lovely goal in the top bin from Jarrett Shroud to give the Red Bulls a 1-0 lead. But as we head into the second half, Chicago looked like they were threatening to get the equalizer, and they did in the 50th minute when red-hot Robert Beric was able to score from Sikalic. And then there was a question for offside, not only whether if Beric was actually in an offside position, but also on the attacking sequence. It looked like one of the Fire player was in an offside position, but VAR looked at it, they didn't see anything wrong with it, and the goal, of course, was given, and the Fire was able to get the equalizer. And you can definitely see they were not settled with just the equalizer, because they really started to control this game, and that it looked like the Red Bulls were already looking at trying to hold on to just a point out of this game. Frankowski had a chance in the 66th minute, but unfortunately he sent a header that was just high. But fortunately, he would make amends for that, as in the 72nd minute, he would score to give the Fire the lead up to that point, after there was just some chaotic play that was going on in that sequence that include Maric actually saved a shot that came off the post, and somehow in some way Frankowski was there to slot it home. But yeah, the Fire was up 2-1 at that point, and I thought it was pretty much game, set, and match, because the Red Bulls, they must be very dejected. The fact that all that defending that they had to do means pretty much nothing, with them getting no points whatsoever. And it looked more like Chicago was going to get that third goal, with them continue to push and trying to get that insurance third goal. But instead, in the 92nd minute, Brian White scores to tie the game up for the Red Bulls, and that has to be a sucker punch if you're the Chicago Fire, with the way that they looked like they were ready to get a massive 3 points to get themselves back above the red line, and then they gave up a late goal in that game. And that late goal is crucial for the Chicago Fire too, because that late goal, with them getting only a draw out of this game, they are actually find themselves back below the red line, because of the fact that Miami does have a tiebreaker over them in terms of the fact that Miami has more wins than the Chicago Fire. But the shots of this game, 17 shots compared to 9 that the Red Bulls had, 6 shots on goal compared to 4 that the Red Bulls had, 7 shots off target compared to 2 that the Red Bulls had, 4 shots that was blocked compared to 2 that the Red Bulls had, and possession-wise, 55% possession compared to 45% possession that the Red Bulls had. If you're the Chicago Fire, you hope that this is one of those games that is not going to come back to haunt you. The fact that you were on on a verge of getting all 3 points in this game, and the fact that you gave up a late goal, dropped 2 points, that could really maybe be a difference at the end of the season. But if you're the Red Bulls, you know, got to give credit to them, knowing the fact that they could have easily quit when they were down 2-1 at that point. But we have definitely saw some resilience with this Red Bulls team in these last 2 games, able to pull off a late equalizer in the jaw defeat, and they're now sitting in a really good position in terms of them potentially making the playoffs this season. But yeah, there we have it. That is pretty much it for the review of part 1 of these first 6 games from this weekend's MLS action. Let me know in the comments below, what do you think of all 6 of these games? And tomorrow I'm gonna, of course, look at the last 6 games, which includes the El Tráfico that is going to be happening tomorrow on Sunday, which is going to be a lunchtime kickoff. But until then, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next time.